Okay, guys, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be Tryhard Tuesday, and I have a sweet one lined up for you guys. Today, I'm going to be playing some Grixis Tempo. I just want to say before we get started, I recorded these matches yesterday very late at night, so this is essentially going to be replay reviews with my commentary. So hopefully it's going to be even more in-depth because you don't just get my live reaction, you also get all of my afterthoughts. So I hope this works out for you guys. And yeah, if I should say so myself, you have something to look forward to. So first of all, Grixis Tempo. This is basically a blue-black shell that chooses to play a worse mana base, incorporating Badlands and Volcanic Islands, trimming a wasteland, trimming a swamp, in order to get access to more versatile removal spells and answer cards. So Molten Collapse is a card that kills anything, including Chalice of the Void, and I think it's pretty big. Also, there's a lot of Tamiyo mirrors out there, and against those decks, you can reliably get a pretty big blowout here. If you manage to descend, you can kill a flip Tamiyo and another creature, so that is pretty awesome. Sideboard-wise, we're getting Pyroblast, Second Collapse, and a single copy of Meltdown. So it doesn't seem like much, but that's actually how I prefer it. I prefer this as a Dimir deck with, you know, some good red cards rather than straight up Grixis. My list is pretty standard. So aside from a few things, so we have our Tamiyos and our Nethergoyfs as a 1-drops. We have the generic stuff, Push, Thoughtseize, Daze, Force of Will, Brazen Borrower, Wasteland. That's going to be very standard. We have a couple of Kaitos or some Grindy Element, a couple of Murktides as finishers. Full set of Bowmasters. This metagame is very, let's just call it Ponder-centric, because this card is going to be good against any, you know, Tempo Pseudo Mirror. It's also going to be good against Sneak and Show, stuff like that. And then occasionally you play against 1-toughness creatures. So my biggest thing about this deck is I really love to play the full playset of Nethergoyf, and I really love to play Mishra's Bauble to make Nethergoyf bigger than, you know, your Curd Ape. That, of course, comes with a cost when it comes to deck building spots, but I don't think Bauble is a bad Magic card, so I'm happy with that for now. I noticed a lot of other Grixis versions focus on having grindy elements like Stock Up, Mystic Sanctuary, but I actually believe that most games of Legacy, I want to focus on, you know, turns 1 through 5 instead. It's clear that if the metagame swings back to being pretty control heavy, then of course we have to make a tough decision. I would say in that case, I just don't think registering Daze, you know, Daze Tempo is the way to go. So I'm focusing on beating, you know, Ancient Tomb combo decks and getting it out of bolt range as soon as possible. Sideboard-wise, incredibly standard, aside from a few cards. We have Hydros, which we need because Blood Moon has just become better against us with us not running basic Swamp. We have Force of Negations against Assorted Combo and Chalice. Meltdown is good against Chalice as well, good against any Mox Opal deck. It's also just a good card against Urza's Saga, which we are slightly more weak to because of going down to 3 Wastelands. Pyroblast going to be amazing. Kill Murktide, counter Force of Will, counter Show and Tell. This card can do it all right. Kill Kaito, whatever the case may be. Second Collapse we already discussed. And then I have my 4 Graveyard Hate Split. So if you guys watched Metagame Monday, you'll know that Graveyard decks are really getting back into things, so it's even possible this Nihil Spellbomb should be main deck instead of Bauble. I'm not quite ready to make that switch. I play 2 Cages because they have crossover usage against Green Sun Zenith, and it's better onboard hate card against Oops All spells. I play Spellbomb because I can bring it in more often, you know, in Pseudo Mirrors, where keeping down Nethergoyfs, proactively shutting down, or at least delaying Murktide Regent is viable. And then a single Fairy Macabre, because that's just another card that lets me keep my hand on the draw against, you know, Oops Reanimator type decks. And then Baragoyf for whenever I need a big fatty. That would be some Pseudo Mirrors, some Ancient Tomb matchup that are creature-centric, etc. So that's going to be the deck tech. And yeah, let's get down to some games. We have 5 full matches ahead of us. All right, let's see how this works. I'm now watching a video while recording a video, so I don't know. Let's see how this works. I'm on the play here. Opponent shows a Yorion, then is playing Orzhov Control. My hand is, you know, solid. I really like playing out my Tamiyo first here and basically asking my opponent if they have the plow or not. because if they don't, I really like my spot. If they do, we move on with life here. Looks like my opponent's on a multi-5, which is something that is very good to think about when making choices. It means that I will value consistency rather than, you know, having a high sense of urgency and taking a lot of chances. So it looks like we are getting plowed here, that's fair. Tameo is kind of like a psychic frog in a way, where if they have a removal spell, life goes on. If they don't, they're in trouble. So I draw Bobble here. I'm going to use my fetch land to get a little bit more information about what I'm drawing, because a game like this, if I can just keep trading resources, I'm winning, right? Because I'm up 2 cards. So I just want to make sure that I don't flood out. And, you know, checking your own deck with Bobble here, if there's a land we can shuffle with Delta, that's going to be awesome. So I see a land. And then I'm not sure if I find that play here. Okay, I do. Nice. So I was about to say, you want to just have a good habit of crack this Delta on the opponent's turn, because that means you have Revolt turned on for the turn. So obviously a Death and Taxes deck, which I guess it is, going turn 1, Flagstones is not threatening any 3 or 4 drops, but in theory the opponent could go, you know, Ancient Tomb, Archon, and then I wouldn't have had Revolt. So this is free. You just need to do it before the Bobble pops here. So I decide to go for a Underground Sea here, which I'm not entirely sure about. I should probably have gone for Volcanic Island. I think I like that in retrospect. Here's Stoneforge Mystic. Depending on what they get, I'm ready to kill that card. But if they get the 3 mana pre-war formal wear, that's not the best plan. They do end up getting the formal wear, so I can't really kill the Stoneforge. Doesn't make any sense. Then they can just reanimate it, right? So I have to slow roll my push. Not ideal. Also note that I cannot wasteland because this is a Flagstones. Draw another Kaito. So at this point, I just need to build my mana base and maybe go Kaito the old-fashioned way. I see another push, and this is actually an interesting decision because push is not good right now, but I'm playing against mono white, so push will be good later. And I think I keep this card, and I like that decision, although it's very close because this game is not really about. It's also about starting to, you know, try and do something proactively, because the draw go situation is their chance to get back into the game, in my opinion, from being 2 cards down. Remember, we're still working against the double mulligan. So let's see. Okay, they go tap land here. That could mean they don't have more lands. That could mean they're bridging to 4 mana. I guess with milling over port here, it means that they're doing well on land. So at this point, I'm pretty sure my opponent's hand is land. At the very least, the first land, and then the formal wear. It might even be double land. So the opponent's considering attacking here. I would have loved to see that, but obviously the opponent respects Bowmaster. And we have another turn cycle where I can't really push, because then they're just going to bring back the Stoneforge, get a better equipment, la la la. So I think what I do here is I untap and jam the Kaito. So here I can choose between playing Island or Wasteland. They have a little bit of advantages, each of them. I think the right play is to play Wasteland, because if my opponent develops another non-basic like Scrubland, then if I draw a second Wasteland, I can double waste my opponent. So I'm at the same time, I don't care if Wasteland gets wastelanded. So I hope I play Wasteland here. Wasteland is cast. Ooh, okay. Okay, so let's think a little bit about this. I could have played Kaito, but I wasteland my opponent here. So I'm right now valuing stopping both of our development, basically, because nothing is happening here. Okay, so I guess I'm trying to make them, I'm trying to punish them for milling over the port and then making Yorion a non-factor for as long as possible while giving up playing Kaito. So I think, yeah, I know, I remember. This is because my opponent was threatening Philia there, so that's why I didn't do it. I'm going to put Yorion to hand. No Philia was cast, and now is a better time to play Kaito. Yeah, I remember now, and I agree with it. We hang on to the fetch, because we do have 1 red card in our deck. It's slightly awkward, I must say. So here, let's see what I go for with Kaito. Surveilling, putting a loyalty on it with an emblem, or shutting down the Stoneforge. I think I actually shut down the Stoneforge here because right now that's my opponent's only way of pressuring Kaito, and I would get a few turns of hopefully connecting with Kaito to buy back card advantage. And yeah, I like this. This is solid play. I also really like this. This is not impressive for my opponent. My opponent plays a 2/2, and I have luckily sandbagged a fetch land so that I can kill it, get in for damage, and start drawing with Kaito. So here, because I have the island, the Badlands balances that out. I'm going to develop a red source here regardless. And then I'm going to make sure that if I get wastelanded, they're wastelanding a tapped land. It's minor, just good habit here. Kaito gets in there. And now I can start filtering my draws. Like, Scry 2 draw card is closer to draw 2 cards than you might think. So here we have a couple of 3/4s. It looks like it's just nice to have, you know, nut lands on top of my deck. That these cards will be super useful. So what I expect to do here is keep both Netherglyphs and play a couple of 1-drops. Now we're also, in theory, threatening another Kaito. Let's see. The opponent has Formalware with no targets in the yard, Yorion, and 3 unknowns in hand. We have the information that they milled over Rashad and Port at some point. Which means they had enough lands at least, right? So could be a land in there. Could be another Witch Enchanter. Let's see. Okay, so they play out this card. This is, when you play out a Ganju Castle, you don't have other planes. So that, again, that helps us a little bit narrowing down our opponent's hand. 5 mana means Solitude, and it looks like they're going for it now rather than let me untap. This is a good play. If I untap, I potentially have Hardcast Force. So good play on the opponent. I think they get rid of Tameo here. So my opponent is basically saying I can battle with, you know, creatures with power and toughness, but more card advantage is going to be annoying. Also worth noting here, Push does not handle Solitude. I still have good attacks here. And get in with both. Get in for 6. Keep drawing, filtering, and then develop at least another 3/4 post-combat. So I really like my spot here. As soon as I saw my opponent mull to 5, my state of mind was, let's play this slow and steady and, you know, not leave anything up to chance when it comes to drawing 3 lands in a row or whatever. So this Bowmasters is actually pretty good because it handles Solitude so well in combat. I think I can take the Ponder here and then Ponder into the Bowmaster. Here I'm debating whether I want, like, it's a matter of mana usage, and here I have mana to do everything. I can Ponder, I can Bowmasters, I can Netherglyph, and I can hold up Fatal Push. So that's what I want to do here. This is 2 Kaito hits already against the mull to 5. So opponent is, of course, in a little bit of trouble. So here, I make sure that I draw the Bowmaster, count my mana, play Netherglyph. And here, the ideal scenario for me is my opponent spends some kind of removal spell onto the Netherglyph, tries to attack Kaito, and then I ambush them with Bowmaster. That's like the bread and butter of what I would want to happen here. Second Solitude would be annoying. Yeah, this is ideal. This is exactly what I was hoping for in this scenario, and I don't think my opponent can play around Bowmaster here. They checked me a few turns ago when it came to Bowmaster, but, you know, you can't just let this Kaito roam, so pretty nice. Bowmaster here, ping and block with the Orc army, leaving a Bowmaster in play. I will say my opponent did show a Shadowy Backstreet, so they might even play Bowmaster. Just stuff like that is important to pick up on. Because let's say I just looked at the board now, I'd be thinking, oh, for sure mono white, but with that Surveil land in the mix. I'll be thinking the Black Splash. So it looks like here comes Yorion, and this is where leaving up Fatal Push is going to reward me a lot. Let's say I could have, cantrip one more time, but because I knew my opponent put Yorion into hand, this is just good play, right? I've just been using my mana every turn, always interacting favorably for me. So I can start by pondering, see if I can find a Molten Collapse. And then I really like using my Kaito to shut down Yorion. Yeah, this is amazing. I remember this turn. So now I can stack my deck so that I draw Force plus blue card off of Ponder and ninjaing in the second Kaito. So stun the onboard Yorion, get in for a bunch, pass the turn with Force Will backup. I can even replay the Nethergoyf here, so yeah, super smooth. Kaito, and I know Kaito is going to draw me into the next blue card, and then I make sure that I keep the better blue card as my natural draw step next turn, and I believe I draw into Brainstorm now, and then I draw Murktide Region next turn. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is ideal. So Murktide on top first, then Brainstorm on top, then replay the Nethergoyf, threaten lethal if I plus my Kaito. Super, actually, a crazy good game when it comes to showcasing the power of Bauble, mana usage, timing on the Bowmaster, Kaito. So here my opponent tries with their last, pseudo comeback. The formal wear that we knew about since turn 2. And here I have to do the math. If I plus my Kaito, I have exactly 10, so I should threaten that. What's the best thing my opponent can have here? It's something like Ophelia, but I'm not too worried about that. I'm going to attack it for a bunch and then playing a Murktide if that's the case. So pretty sweet game 1 here. My opponent did see the red splash. That's something to think about. So for sideboarding, we don't actually have that much against that deck. I don't like Daze. I like all of those cards, so that's pretty standard. Maybe I add the Meltdown for something. Let's see. The Meltdown kills Ethervile. I'm trying to think what to do here. Cutting a Force makes a lot of sense. Future Eco accepts past Eco's choices. All right, so we're going to be on the draw here. Up a game against Death and Taxes. I'm playing Grixis, my current favorite deck in Legacy, I would say. But again, that can change from week to week. This hand is not perfect. This hand lets me get, hopefully use some cantrips to get into the game. If I natural draw a land, I can play out the Tamiyo. Force of Will most likely pitch Force if I need to Force in the first couple of turns. That's something that is very good to think about, that Force pitch for, when you see 2 Forces, it doesn't mean you have to Force twice this game, because you can, pitch them to each other. Because realistically, Force of Will is not the best card against my opponent's deck at all. It's kind of a liability. 1 for 1 is the way to go. At least, yeah, and then again, 1 for 1 is only the way to go in the sense that we have to kill our opponent or find some card advantage at some point. I'm just saying 2 for 1 is not ideal. Vital turn 1 gets forced. My opponent did take a single mulligan, so we're down to, being equal here. This is always a tough call. I hope I go Underground Sea Ponder, because I think if I go Island here, I'm playing a little bit too scared, and then, mid-game Wasteland is going to be brutal regardless, because remember, this version does not have the luxury of going, sit on double basics. So I'm going to have to make a choice at some point. And currently I'm thinking about it in the middle of the night, so forgive me here. Here comes Fetch. Here comes Underground Sea. Here comes Ponder. This is me looking for a land. 3 bad cards, and I shuffle, and I draw a brick. So now my opponent knows the jig is up. Let's say they have a Wasteland, they easily go for it. That's why you should always keep track of what is the opponent doing here. So first clue was I cracked the fetch instead of playing a natural land. Second clue was I shuffled my ponder, right? Ooh, we're Shadow Port. It's been a while. I remember that card used to be the most expensive card on Magic Online, cost like 140 ticks back in the day. So here, my opponent did not tap me down. If they did, I would have brainstormed. Now I'm going to brainstorm anyway, and I'm expecting my opponent to have Ophelia. I draw 2 lands, so that means I'm in the game. Which 1-drop do I want? Here I'm slow rolling my my Badlands because I have a Molten Collapse in hand. And I'm playing out my blue 1-drop because if I get ported, then I can double black 1-drop off of the Badlands. Again, very important with these details. I was about to say Caracas is obviously the best answer, but I was about to say I don't expect this Tameo to survive, but I expect that I need to use my mana wisely. So look at this. If I get tapped down here, I can play 2 Nethergoyfs. So let's say I played that out last turn, then I can only play 1 Nethergoyf here, and that would just be, you know, inefficient. So now I have some stuff going on. My opponent keeps making their land drop. Let's see. Land Sash is annoying. Land Sash is very strong at controlling the size of Nethergoyfs, and I actually think this is a key point of the game. So first thought is just kill it with Collapse and move on. But I have to do some math here. So obviously if I send the Nethergoyfs, my opponent can block, exile a Ponder. That means I only have instants in the yard. Only instants in the yard is not dangerous for the opponent because instants is the only thing I can put there, right? Like at instant speed. So this is actually, I found a good spot here to make good usage of Bowmaster, where I trade another Nethergoyf, but I get to develop a Bowmaster and finish off the Sash here. So I'm really happy with this play. And I feel like the opponent is going to take the block any day of the week. Also, minor thing, that means they tap down from white, which means I can then develop the Tameo and then, like, for free, and then trade a mana so my opponent doesn't have 5 mana next turn. They have to bounce the Tameo and they only have 4, right? So this is obviously not ideal, but it's fine. So now I need to let the damage happen first. I hope I do that. Because if I don't, then I could theoretically get solituded and look very silly. So now the Nethergoyf is dead. I get in for 1. Then I develop a Bowmaster to finish off the Sash, which is going to be huge for the quality of this Nethergoyf moving forward. So that card is dead. Develop Tameo. Again, it's just trading for a mana when it comes to Caracas, but I didn't have anything else to use my mana on, so that was a good exchange for me. Here's Recruiter. Recruiter is not the end of the world. Most likely going to get something like a Solitude. Oh, no, they go for Extraction Specialist. Okay, that's actually quite decent with Lion Sash. Again, opponent plays out a Ganjo, means they don't have any more lands. Amio gets bounced. Solid stuff. I do have a second Bowmaster here in the face of some 1/1s. I expect to cast this Ponder before attacking, because that will grow my Nethergoyf. These cards are good. 3-drop, not very reliable right now, but the other cards are awesome. So this looks like I should just draw the 2 1-drops back to back and then cast Bowmaster this turn after my opponent blocks. That looks like exactly what's going on here. Now that goes up to 3/4. I can send the squad here. I don't mind trading Bowmasters here. Bowmaster's not amazing against my opponent's deck once it's already in play and has done its job. And if my opponent wants to trade off the board, that's awesome. Then I use Bowmaster to clear it out entirely. So this is the important part of the game where I have to step on my opponent's throat when they're down. So here I should Bowmaster before damage to get in for 1 more with the Orc Army, killing the Mother of Runes. So get in for 5 here is not bad. My opponent has nothing in play. Yorion's still in, I was about to say command zone. Second port is not something I'm scared of. Here's the Specialist. Specialist getting back a Lion Sash, I believe. So Now my opponent can start shrinking Nethergoyfs. That's pretty cool. Lucky for me, I have a double removal spell available and can keep attacking. So it looks like I need to kill the specialist and the Lion Sash and just keep attacking here. Then if my opponent uses their mana, I can cast Barragoyf next turn. If they tap me down, I can, you know, cast Ponder and see what's going on. My opponent is shrinking probably once more onto the Ponder. That would make a lot of sense. Then I put a sorcery with Collapse. And attack for 5 or 6. Looks like 5. Okay. So I keep up the pressure here. Things are going according to plan. I'm not getting buried in any advantage, and it's on my opponent to react to what's on board. Yorion to hand is not scary. Another land, then I expect to get double ported. Opponent goes for Underground Sea, makes sense. This is a good way to stop, you know, Ponder from getting cast, and of course the known Tameo as well, right? So I'm not casting anything scary out of 1 black or 1 red compared to blue or black flexibility. Here comes Yorion. My opponent's at 4, so if I attack with everybody, they're at 2. Also note that my opponent is keeping up Caracas instead of okay, I'm getting Wastelanded, sure. Okay, that's pretty decent for my opponent. Ooh, they have more stuff. Okay, late game Vial is not something I'm scared of. They're Hellbent here, so I can get my opponent to 1. Ah, yeah, that draw is probably going to be too much for my opponent. Because now I can play Barragoyf. That means if I attack with everybody, I'm going to have my Nethergoyf eaten, and I'm going to have 3 lethal creatures on the following turn, which makes it very hard for my opponent to do anything. I think only Stoneforge Mystic for... what's the name of it? The pre-war Fulmaware is going to do something for my opponent. Yeah, this seems simple, but I'm just trying to figure out what kind of cards my opponent can draw to get out of this. Because every time you're suicide attacking, you have to, yeah, think a little bit extra. That's just a good guess, or a good bet rather. So now I feel like I should fetch Volcanic and play Barragoyf. Oh, I don't. Okay, that's probably a slight mistake, because at this point I have to tell myself this game is going to move. Like if my opponent breaks here, nothing matters. So I have to, you know, make my plays so that if they get lucky to get back into the game, I put myself in the best possible position. I'm not sure the Underground Sea did that. All right, pretty sweet first match here against Death and Taxes. Let's keep it rolling. All right, match 2. Currently 1-0 playing Grixis. I'm on the draw here. Obviously, cannot keep this hand. No colored sources. I think there exists some, you know, Force of Will double Wasteland hands. Maybe something like Wasteland, double Bauble, Force of Will. Like, there exists some hands you can keep without a colored source, but it's a pretty solid rule of thumb. I'm keeping this, and I have some cantrips. I have a Wasteland, so I'm somewhat quickly building a graveyard for Murktide. But I don't have any small creatures to make Kaito a great card, so I'm going to put that back into my deck here. Obviously, I have no idea what I'm up against, which, you know, could change that decision, but we have to make our best bet in the dark. Looks like my opponent has a pre-game action, and that is Devourer of Destiny. So you thought that deck was gone, but it's not. Just check my sideboard here, how soft I actually am to Eldrazi, and it doesn't look good. So opponent keeps 7. Opponent plays first. So either I'm up against Chalice or I'm up against turn 2 4-drop. I'm not very good against either. My hope here is now my opponent makes a bad decision on the Devourer, and I can kind of punish with a Wasteland, and they don't do anything turn 1, you know, that kind of stuff. The thing about Wasteland against that deck is you need your opponent to basically stop playing lands for Wasteland to be good, or you need to do something very meaningful in the meantime, and just being on the draw with no creature, usually you're not, so tough situation. Chalice, absolute worst thing that could happen here. My only play is to Wasteland the Ancient Tomb my opponent just found off of Once Upon a Time and hope for the best. I draw another 1-drop. At this point, my mind is at dumping Brainstorms into Chalice, play a big Merc, and hope that's enough. But I'm also under the clock of my opponent showing the Devourer pregame, right? So pretty tough odds. My opponent developed Wasteland here, which could mean two things. Either I kind of got them on the Ancient Tomb, or they're simply playing smart, because if they get wasted second time, they want to lose that land instead of a good land like Ivugin, Eldrazi Temple, etc. 1 mana Fleshraker seems fair. Here comes a Chalice for 0. That is finally enough, shutting down actual cards in my deck. My opponent doesn't know that, but they value getting the spawn in there. So here I can surveil. Oh, okay. So I actually like this a lot. So I could have surveilled. Instead, I choose to play a Brainstorm into the Chalice. So I'm just super focused on the Murktide here, and I actually like that a lot. Force of Will is one of the best draws I could ask for. I will say in this spot, my opponent's Wasteland could bury me. And at the same time, if my opponent's Wastelanding me, that means, you know, they're getting further from casting that Devourer. So I don't know. This is just a very bad situation. So I obviously pitched the blue card that is not a Murktide and is not something I can dump into the graveyard. So now I'm hoping for my opponent to attack. Also note that my opponent could Wasteland me as late as my upkeep. So I feel like if I cast this Brainstorm now, my opponent's going to be, you know, tipped off and just Wasteland me. So I think what I'm going to do here is cast Bowmaster in a turn. But I'm actually not sure about that decision. It's at this point, the sense of urgency is so high that I need to make the most desperate play possible. I'm not sure this is it. Also, let's count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, my opponent can cast the Devourer, so that's something I actually didn't think about real time, but I'm actually going to concede to that in a second here. I actually end up getting lucky drawing the Bauble. So the Bauble, you know, gets countered by Chalice, then I play Murktide, and then my opponent has 7 mana and cast the Devourer, and then I concede. So pretty standard game here. So let's see what I can do in sideboarding. I have the Collapse, I have the Meltdown, again, some Chalice of the Void answers, and I have some fatties here. And more, you know, Chalice, Grim Monolith, poorly timed Coldelic Command answers in Force Negation. So let's see what I like here. I don't like the Bowmasters, that's for sure. Cards like Tameo and Ponder are not perfect either, but might be necessary evil. So let's see. Cut Bowmasters. I think I like that. I cut a single Thoughtseize. I also like that. And then I need to cut one more card. Is that a Tameo maybe? That just seems so slow against that deck. The deck, it's a lot more about attacking for damage and interacting than, you know, grinding a little bit of advantage. So I add some fatties. I add some challenge removal. This matchup is not great. This is something that I've talked about for a couple of ban cycles now. When Reanimator gets banned and people respect it less, could actually be a net gain for the deck overall. You know, when the deck loses a card, right? So in a vacuum, it gets worse, but in practice could be a wash. So this hand is what I would call a marginal keep. This is a hand that kind of has to hit, you know, random blue card for force and good cards off of the Ponder in order to be viable. Fatal Push is hit or miss against that deck. Sometimes it's clutch against Thought-Knot Seer. Or Flesh Raker, sometimes he just sits there, and the second copy is especially bad. Ooh, yeah. I keep these because I can force once, then I draw another force, so yeah, it's just not perfect. This is actually pretty good for me. I feel like getting wasted here is acceptable. The thing is, my next card down is bad, so I feel like I should play out the Tarn now, and then I should probably go and get Surveil, in which case I don't have red mana for my 3 red cards in the deck. So again, I just want to mention that the mana base is not free. Basic Forest, pass. The thing is, that is obviously a good sign, but when I'm not doing anything in the meantime, then it's gonna be bad at some point. Here I actually keep the days because it either doubles my force count or is just a solid, you know, solid counter magic. Again, I'm not attacking with another Goyf, so not ideal. Cavern makes all of this very questionable. Here comes Chalice or what? Yeah, here comes Chalice for 1. So now I have a choice between how to deal with it. And I think I like dazing, returning, Surveil. It looks like my mana development is not crucial. Let's say I had a Baragoyf in hand. Then I obviously wouldn't do it because I want to cast that next turn. But here, I'm actually quite desperate for digging for gas. But it's just to say that sometimes, even though you have 2 mana, you're going to return a land with Daze. My opponent showed game 1 that they're the red version. So in theory, they could have a Spirit Guide here, and then I would have to force. So bad situation all around. Chalice hits the bin. Very happy to see that, but the Cavern in play is going to be so annoying. Okay, I draw another Goyf. Let's see. Milling over a Badlands. Playing a 3-4. 3-4 very quickly gets outshined, though. Let's see what my opponent has here. Second Cavern, which even makes it so that I can't draw a Wasteland and then turn on my force. It's just going to be rough game for those blue cards. Second name on Eldrazi as well. An opponent with Trinisphere here. Okay, so I cast Negation on it because Force of Will is more flexible later. I will say Hardcast Force Negation is not nothing. But I think here is better to play as if I draw, you know, Kaito, Murktide, Cantrip into those cards. And then also Force of Will is more flexible later. So a bunch of reasons for that to be true. That it's good to keep the Force. Here I brainstorm first because I play Baubles. Not ideal. Really not ideal. I feel like I should be putting back 2 Underground Seas here. Then play another Goyf. Play Tarn, pass. Hope that my opponent plays Thought Nuts here and I can, you know, fetch and push it before it resolves. At least the trigger, of course, I'm talking about. Yeah, my first hit is not ideal. Obviously, I have bad cards on top of my deck. I keep the Force so that if I draw a random blue card, then at least I can force something later, like a Kozilek's Command. Again, I really feel like I need my opponent to play Thought Unseer here, or I'm in deep trouble. Yeah. the Blast Zone is certainly a good card when you're just trying to, you know, stop the pressure. Here I'm fetching Volcanic, I would guess. Badlands is gone. What can I draw? Another Fatal Push. That is probably going to be the nail in the coffin here, because those are just dead cards. My opponent kills off the 1-drops. I think I can replay one of them. As a Curd Ape, exiling one of the others. Only 4 card types total. Here's a 2-3. So I really need my opponent to stop playing lands now to have a shot. Realistically, if they have their mana functioning here, I'll just get buried. I guess Thought-Knot Seer is beatable because I can draw something like a fetch or a wasteland and kill it with this remaining push. Let's see what their play is here. Something not using Cavern, so... Oh, yeah, I remember this. So my opponent's just paying for Kozilek's Command, and I concede here. All right. That's gonna put us at 1-1. Let's see if we can get some more wins on the board. All right, match 3 is upon us here. I want the draw. This hand looks reasonable. There's some mana conflict. Ooh, Ancient Tomb is not what I want to see here. Defense Grid. So I guess this hand it doesn't do anything. I draw a second land, and now we have to think. So I can Thoughtseize my opponent. I can develop with Ponder, or I can try and stall my opponent with the Wasteland. If I Thoughtseize, and they have, multiple pieces of action, doesn't do anything. If I Ponder, I could die to set piece of action. So I think here I'm very willing to take a chance on Wasteland and hope that it represents more than a single time walk so that I could get into the game, maybe eventually bounce the grid and take it with Thoughtseize. Let's see what I decide to do here. That's my logic anyway. Sometimes you have to realize how close are you to dying and how much can you afford to respect that, if that makes sense. It's always pros and cons. If I Thoughtseize here and I see double spell, I'm in a poor spot. If I Thoughtseize here and I see, one good spell, then I look like a genius, right? So I Wasteland here. If my opponent just plays, keeps playing Magic here, I look silly, but at least I gave myself the chance here. My opponent passes, which is amazing for me, obviously. But now I know my opponent's not doing anything, and they're probably playing some like Mystic Forge type deck. So here I actually decide to get straight to the beatdowns with the logic of my opponent needs lands, so picking one of their spells doesn't do anything. My opponent bricks once more, and this is where I'm starting to feel like I'm doing well in this game. So here I can Ponder Fetch Ponder Fetch Thoughtseize. Okay, so this Force of Will is dead as we speak, but I have Brazen Borrower, so I could theoretically make that card live later, so I expect that I'm keeping these. Looks like I'm drawing the Force, casting Thoughtseize and attacking. I like that. So I could go Badlands. Badlands would be bad if I'm casting, double Ponder later. Badlands would be bad if I'm casting Murktide later. Looks like I'm willing to prioritize the Collapse here. And now we see what our opponent's deck is. So it wasn't any Mystic Forge deck, it was a Red Storm. So here my opponent has, tons of action. Second defense grid, which is good to know about. So I think I should just take the Spirit Guide here because that makes it so that my opponent is less likely to just draw Ancient Tomb and win the game. Because then they would be lacking red mana, right? So taking the Spirit Guide here is the only option, and then commence the beats. I think I have a little bit of a think about it. End up taking the Spirit Guide. These are the cards remaining. Crossing out the Spirit Guide. Opponent bricks once more. So this is obviously a bit uneventful on the side of my opponent, but it's still very important to showcase that I let myself get lucky with, what did I Wasteland? I started the beat down. I Thoughtseize the Spirit Guide. Like, all of those small choices is just, if I don't nail those, I could easily lose. So here I decide to ponder into a land rather than just cast the Brazen. I think this is a reasonable risk to take. Bouncing the defense grid. I believe I have a second Force of Will on top of my deck. My opponent has to go to double cleanup here, which is obviously not ideal. My game plan now is about that double force. Note that Force is good against the Wishes, but it's bad against storm cards like Galvanic Relay. So here, getting Kaito going is probably the way to go. Kaito will get me into the next blue card, so I still have double force. Then I can redeploy another Goif next turn. Right now, it's just about slowly and steadily reducing my opponent's life total to 0 while building as much, disruption as possible. And funnily enough, my opponent can explode at any moment and, Galvanic Relay, and I'll be in super trouble. So I'm certainly not taking this lightly. So now I have to realize what's the card. Let's say my opponent forces me to double force, which is the card I want left. And I realize that is Murktide Regent. So that's why I draw the Brainstorm. So that if I deplete my hand here of blue cards, I draw the Murktide Regent instead of Brainstorm. That card is also representing lethal when I cast it as a 6/6. So now my opponent has to beat double force before I get 2 more attack steps off, which is, not easy at all. Opponent's up to 8 cards, and they concede here. So obviously pretty uneventful, but I feel like there's a lot of small choices that allowed me to get lucky. Hydros are good against this deck. Meltdown is solid, especially if they, play Saga or they have to play out some artifacts. It's even a 3-mana kill defense grid card, so reasonable. Removal spells are bad. Bowmasters are bad. I like the baubles. So let's see how much graveyard hate I decide to bring in. Because I feel like I would have to keep some Bowmasters in the deck unless I go full on cages. 1 cage, 1 bomb. I actually like that, and then a couple of Bowmasters. Not because they're great, but maybe there's Echo of Eons in there. Just end stepping that card to deal some amount of chip damage is useful. So obviously the worst card in my deck post sideboard, but that's the thing about Bowmasters. It's still a black race the alarm. Let's see if the opponent can put up any fight here. I will be going first. This hand is obviously not good on turn 1, but I think it's a solid keep. I have Wasteland for a Saga. I can Thoughtseize my opponent turn 1. I'll take this. Mountain Pass. So what I'm scared about against that deck is certainly the Storm cards, the Wishes. So here I have to Thoughtseize and hope my opponent doesn't have double action. And if they do have double action, I hope the second card gets dazed. So my opponent has now a ton of mana sources with just 1 action card, so they're making it somewhat easy for me to maneuver. In games like this, it's important to note that Wasteland doesn't do anything against my opponent, so this should be a mana source for the remainder of the game. Maybe it's going to help me with Kaito. Maybe it's going to help me with... Yeah, maybe that's it. My opponent plays out that past the turn, so worth noting is if they draw Galvanic Relay, they can somewhat fast do something nasty. Okay. Drawing Hydra is good, so... But I also need to pressure my opponent, so I feel like I should Ponder here to try and find a land. Cast Ponder. Okay, so bit of a different plan. Force of Will, also good. So the Brainstorms are not very strong, but the Force of Will is awesome. So now I go Wasteland Pass, then next turn I can start playing a threat if I want to, which I probably should. I have track on my opponent, 4 out of my opponent's 6 cards at this point. So again, this is about not dying, but at some point it's also about at reducing my opponent's life total. That's the mindset here. Opponent passes the turn. I know about Brainstorm on top of my deck, and I feel like this is where I play another Goif and hope for the best. I don't want to Brainstorm before I've cleared my entire top of library. Because if I brick, I think it's catastrophical. I actually think I'm in a decent spot, having the Force for now and then having the Hydro for later. Hydro covers their 8 wishes and even the Jessica's will, so pretty happy about that. I'm not, you know, too thrilled about playing a 2-3 out, but it's better than not doing it. Let me put it that way. So now here comes Wish, and I think I misunderstood this card. So you will have to play that card immediately. So probably my opponent will have like a defense grid or whatever in the sideboard, and I should have let this resolve. I, for some reason, was thinking it was put any card into your hand, but I think this is a bad play. I should have asked my opponent to tap their tomb once more. I'm pitching the Daze to counter it, though. I guess if my opponent has a... No. Spirit Guide in hand, then it's Galvanic Relay for 2. No, that was just a bad play. Against Burning Wish, I force it. Normal Wish, I'll let my opponent go here. So now I've cleared the top 2 bricks of my deck, and I'm casting Brainstorm. The goal to find land, which I do. Not bad. Meltdown is terrible here, so I expect to get rid of it alongside, I don't know, Redundant Brainstorm or maybe Kaito. Maybe I don't have time for Kaito, like tapping 3 mana to get an engine going. That would be the kind of turning point, though, if I get some card advantage going. So this game, again, it's a lot about spending my mana wisely, putting up, you know, putting up a clock while also guarding as much as I can. So at this point, I only have a Hydroblast and, of course, you know, shutting down the graveyard in case they're in Past in Flames deck. But yeah, this is kind of a complicated game because my opponent got so much time, and this has been my issue with this deck since, you know, its inception, that this deck is actually giving the combo decks a lot of time to get back into things after initially getting, you know, kind of shut down. Here's Spell Bomb. Here's 3 damage. I think how I play this is I want to hold up Hydro on my opponent's turn, and if nothing happens, I crack my Spell Bomb to like move on with life here. Because at this point, it's even speculative that my opponent is even using the graveyard in this deck. 3rd Ancient Tomb is obviously terrible for my opponent. I know about Petal and Opal, and then 2 unknowns. I feel like if those were any sort of action, they would have cast it already. So I really like my chances here. Let's see what I go for here. I expect double... I expect 2nd Underground Sea to be the fetch. Cracking Spell Bomb. To move on with life here, grow the Goif. Any damage matters in a matchup where the opponent might tap Ancient Tomb. I'm so sad my opponent's not at 13. I feel like that Force of Will on the Wish, that was where I needed to play better and realize the text on the card. Okay, so wow, now I'm really building some wall here. I'm still bad against Storm cards, but I'm very good against the Wishes, the Jessica's Will, that kind of stuff. Let's see, I already have land, sorcery, instant, artifact in the graveyard, so I'm trying to think of a reason to cast this Ponder. It's hard for me to get a creature into the yard here, or a Planeswalker. But anyway, here we go. Tameo double land. So keep those because now I have Brainstorm fetch. So now I'm holding up Artcast negation if I have to. Probably not the case though. I'm basically holding up Hydroblast with Brainstorm fetch and Force Pitch while attacking for 4, so that's not bad. A game like this, or a match like this rather, I feel it's very important to pay attention to the details of, we're in such a good spot, but how do we possibly lose, and what can we do in order to, you know, address that. You don't want to get lazy, because then on any given Sunday, that's going to be the difference between winning and losing. Like the force on that wish, that was not good. So here I fetch my Surveil, respond with a Brainstorm, waiting for my priority here. So I like my hand, so this Brainstorm might not do a whole lot, but I can get rid of the worst card in my hand here after drawing 3. So that's probably just going to be the land. I have infinite counter magic. So I put back a random card and a land, and then I mill over the land, draw the random card. I'm still keeping the Wasteland around because of Ursa Saga. Here's the Nethergoyf attack. Opponent's at 7. I wish they were at 5. I like this Brainstorm, actually. Let's see how I play this. Funnily enough, I think I'm putting back Force of Will here. Or, wait a minute. Yeah, because that's not hard castable. So if I put back Tamiyo and Force of Will, that's kind of weird. But I think it's the right move, because then I pass with Force Pitch, Force Hardcast, and Hydro up. And then maybe you should probably argue that the Tamiyo was the worst card, which shouldn't make me put it back, but should make me keep it to Force Pitch. That's a minor detail for sure, but oh, okay. So I guess I just play this for the hell of it. Okay, fair enough. The Wasteland is bad here. And I think I'm just on, you know, attack and make my opponent beat me here. I don't believe I'm gonna. Am I gonna Kaito here? Let's see. Yeah, well, I might as well, right? Whether I get my opponent to 3 or 4 is not relevant. But if I tap 3 mana, maybe that's relevant. Let's see. Hardcast, Hydro. Okay, I decide to Ninja here, which is totally reasonable. My opponent had 3. +1 from Kaito is lethal next turn. And I have a bad card on top. So in theory, I'm doing something useful here. Getting rid of the Tamiyo, drawing into another force. And I can now play Nethergoyf, hold up Hydro, and double force. So my opponent is now too late when it comes to storming with Galvanic Relay, and I have all the wishes covered. Okay, this was a pretty cool game because it had so many small micro decisions that in combination made it unwinnable for the opponent. So here, fun fact, my opponent is activating using Ancient Tomb. So if I played better, I would have probably forced the defense grid earlier on in the game from the wish. And then my opponent wouldn't have that mana. You know, someday that will be the difference between winning and losing. I'm going to let Monolith resolve here and think about there's some new cards with Storm, like 4/4 Dragon with Storm, and bad things can happen here. I feel like I did a reasonable job this game. Here's Petal turning on Metalcraft. Lion's Head Ammon. So this is basically where my opponent's saying I'm playing Echo of Eons as well. I'm going to let that happen. Opponent's Storm is up to 4. Opponent's Storm is now up to 5. But yeah, I'm scared. Certainly scared here that I'm losing to a bunch of dragons. Rite of Flame gets pitched. Interesting. I think if my opponent had something like the dragon, they would have cast Rite of Flame, but I don't know. Let's see. Ah, yeah. My opponent cast Echo of Eons. I exile it, and yeah, that's the end of that. So 2-1. Let's keep going. All right, next match. I'm playing Grixis Tempo, and I'm on the draw against Ancient Tomb again. That's too funny. Ooh, here comes Chalice of the Void. Well, we have to counter it. Let's see if we're up against Eldrazi again. That would be hilarious. So now I just want to pause here. So my opponent plays Ancient Tomb. I'm very certain that this is something that I want to wasteland. I do have another Netherglyph as well, so I guess I'll look at my opponent's top here because, oh wow, Lodestone Golem, that's cool. So let's say I see Urza Saga here, then maybe I, play the Netherglyph, I sandbag the Wasteland. So whenever you're deciding on Bauble, you just need a plan for why you're doing it. If I wasn't planning on wasting, I would do it on myself. I have a bad card, play C. Oh, sorry, I fetch. If I have a good card, I play C Netherglyph, right? So just have a plan with that card, and you'll be fine. Here, I'm trying to strand. Obviously, when I see that card, I can potentially strand cards in my opponent's hand. That's where Wasteland becomes awesome. I don't like the pause here from my opponent, insinuating they have more than one land drop available. Here's Urza Saga, speaking of the devil. So now my Netherglyphs are already up to a 3-4, which is not bad. My opponent's an Ancient Tomb deck. Hopefully the constructs are going to be small. That's like my plan here. So let's try and dodge Ancient Tomb, City of Traders. Okay, that's Ancient Tomb. So the good news is that turns on the Bowmaster on the end step. And I draw a blue card to pair with my Force. So I really like my spot now. So now I get in for 3. Then I Bowmaster that one. And then it's up to my opponent to tutor something. And then hopefully I can, they'll keep tapping their Ancient Tomb and I can Force of Will something big and really take advantage. I think this is me trying to figure out if I should develop a Netherglyph or use my Bowmaster, but it's just clearly better. First of all, I'm actually killing a creature with it. Second of all, it's only one smaller, power-wise, and it spends my mana better. So, pretty excited about that one. Which should I go for here? Probably Underground C, because I could draw something like a Fatal Push or another Goyf, and then I want to double spell. If I go Badlands, then I can draw Murktide, I can't cast it. If I go Volcanic, I can't double black, so I think it's okay to leave a single Molten Collapse uncastable in my deck here. Opponent goes to 11. That's a 2-2 out. Here's Brainstorm. So the thing about Brainstorm is if I Brainstorm now, I can find Fatal Push, which would let me attack with everybody. So I feel like that's what I'm going to do. And if I brick, I just attack with Netherglyph and play another. Note that this Urborg might save my opponent life down the line with Ancient Tomb. So the Shadow Spear is kind of my opponent's plan here. Let's see. I would guess we're just up against a mud type deck. The Lodestone Golem is really rare to see. Let's see. We can. Okay. So I end up finding the push here and the land. So it looks like I can do everything. But that means I'll be shuffling away my stuff. So I think I know what I need to do here is to push and attack. And not worry about the Netherglyph until next turn, because I want to keep the Force of Will. So if I put back something like, let's see, land Netherglyph. Yeah, land first, then Netherglyph. Tab out to push, attack. Then I have Daze and Force up, and I'm drawing Netherglyph next turn. Yeah, I like that a lot. So I hope I put Tarn back first. My brain is trying to work here. We're approaching midnight by the time of the recording. Yeah, I think here I'm trying to crack the math of can I keep everything, but obviously I can't because this is not Ancestral Recall. But I don't want to. Days looks like it's going to be awesome here. And I want to have Force Pitch after Days as well. Come on, Eco, find the line. Put back a land, put back another if you can do it. I don't have any, smart way to fast forward here, so you'll have to bear with me. Let's see, does this grow? No, it doesn't grow. I think this is also part of why I wanted to cast a Ponder, because that would grow my Nethergoyf, but... Ooh, I'm getting closer to the line. Perfect. Fatal Push on the Construct, attack for 5, force your next spell, attack for lethal, most likely, right? Pretty smooth sailing here. Force the Chalice, Wasteland the Tomb, Bowmaster away the 1/1. Make my opponent pay here with Nethergoyf. A lot of this deck's success, I feel like, is based on your ability to put on pressure while disrupting. You're not a good control deck. That's just the reality of the situation. So Ursa Saga is going to be too late here. Opponent taps 3 mana. Here's a Tangle Wire. Tangle Wire will, it would have bought my opponent time, so there's no reason to let them. So this is lethal here. Now we have to sideboard against a weird mud deck. It looks like Negations, Collapse, Meltdowns, those are awesome. And we keep playing against decks where Bowmasters is not good. I guess that's the League metagame for you. I'm keeping in all the pushes here, which I'm not sure I agree with in retrospect. But my opponent did show that Lodestone Golem, maybe they have like patchworks or whatever the case may be. So I don't do it because I think they're awesome. I do it because the alternative seems worse. On the draw here, I'm weak to Ursa Saga. Here comes Chalice of the Void. So I think I negate Pitch Brainstorm. This could be a game where I'm double forcing. Okay. Probably Force Pitch Force on the next one. Triple Force seems very ambitious. Let's see. Okay, so some cool lands here. Maze of Ith, Tabernacle. I'm going to take Sphere Resistance because that's a must force. Mindstone is whatever. 3 mana draw card at this point. So this is another game where my opponent has infinite mana. So that means they have good top decks. Oh, by the way, they play out the Planar Nexus they drew because now I have perfect info. Here's Tamiyo. So what I didn't think about here, I remember, is the Tabernacle. I think didn't play this well. I should have played Ponder there to develop rather than play a card that just ends up soaking up my mana. But I guess I got lucky here and my opponent doesn't play Tabernacle. So yeah, Karn is getting forced. So now I have to think about which card am I forcing it with. Force of Will. Do I believe in Triple Force? Do I believe in Triple Force Magic? Or do I believe in Ponder? I think I believe in Triple Force Magic because of the Tamiyo. But this is still a point where I forgot about the Tabernacle. The Tabernacle will make it so that spending 2 mana to crack clues is not a plan, right? And what do I do with that Ponder? I think I passed the turn here, and that's my mistake this game. Yeah, I passed the turn. I realized this is my force fodder. Totally forgot about. I had to pay for Tamiyo. So now I'm just in a position where I'm building clues for no reason. Or, I can't really take advantage of it anyway. Brainstorm is an amazing draw. Some misclick there. Tried to attack. Did not succeed. So when it rains, it pours. Here's for resistance that I'm for sure going to counter with Ponder. And now I can make a cool trick since I drew the Brainstorm on upkeep here to basically ignore the Tabernacle. Let's see. Fatal Push is not good. Kaito's not good. I want lands. Not going to pay for the Tamiyo, so thankfully it flipped into a Planeswalker. So I have a Fatal Push on top of my deck, so I play the fetch out to have the flexibility to fetch it away. If my opponent then plays, I don't know, Lodestone Golem, then I can keep it around. Going for Sewers here. Milling over the bauble. And now I have a choice to make. So I know my opponent doesn't have anything. They would have cast it, right? Their hand is Maze of Ith, one unknown. So now I have to make a choice, because I could bring back Force of Will, but I could also tick up Tamiyo. Here I'm cracking a clue to learn a little bit more. I'm 100% my opponent doesn't have an action card in hand, so I'm not casting Thoughtseize here, which may or may not be a mistake. I feel like I'm never getting punished for my opponent randomly having an action card in hand there, but this might come in handy later with a Brainstorm or whatever the case may be. Wonder what I should do with my freshly drawn Wasteland. Probably play it and cast Kaito. So that goes to 8, and I play my Kaito, and I give my opponent 1 turn to spike something. Again, we talked a little bit about this in the previous game, but the reason to play out the Wasteland is if this game somehow goes on, then I draw a second Wasteland. I can double Wasteland on the next turn. I don't think these cards do anything, so now I'm living in a world where my Tamiyo gets needled or whatever the case may be. If that's the case, then I have my Kaito to keep going. So I'm actually going to put both into the graveyard. Another Goyf being castable from the graveyard is also pretty darn cool. Cool interaction here as well, as Maze of Ith doesn't work against Kaito. So I'm in a good spot here. My opponent needs to draw something right now. Let's see if they manage, or it's over. All right, the opponent concedes there, so that puts us at 3-1. And yeah, 1 match left to go. Let's see how it goes. All right, match 5 here. Currently 3-1 with Grixis. Pretty cool hand here. I can check my own deck. If I like the card, play C. If I don't like the card, I play Delta. Fetching away a 3rd land here I think is reasonable. I know I have a Kaito, but I feel like when the game progresses, you have to expect that lands are coming, you know, organically, lack of a better word. Turn 1 Curd Ape, not bad. I can daze removal, I can daze whatever. Let's see what I'm up against here. That's the good thing about generic cards. Ooh, it even looks like I'm attacking with a 4/5 turn 2 here. Not bad, not bad. Blooded Strand. I hate White Exile removal. That's very solid against my deck. Let's see what my opponent's playing. Don't plow me, bro. I'm interpreting this as my opponent having a somewhat tough decision when it comes to what to fetch. Ooh, this Brainstorm is cool. I recently had a conversation with a player who said Orcus Billmasters is mediocre. If that is the case, then you don't see players making these turn 1 Brainstorms like it's 2007 all over again. This is Orcus Billmasters being the spooky ghost boogeyman. So let's see here. Cast Ponder first. Really don't care about getting dazed. Pretty nice draws here. So now I have to think about, do I want to develop second threat? Or do I want to Thoughtseize my opponent? And what I hope that I'm doing is I'm going to put another Goyf at the bottom, then land, then seize rather, so that I can Thoughtseize my opponent and hopefully clear the way for a Kaito connection next turn. Let's see if I succeed doing that. Obviously, very hard decision here. You can argue for anything aside from taking the land right away. You can put the land on the bottom even. You can draw another Goyf now. You can draw Thoughtseize now. Lots of options. Which deck would go turn 1, Flooded Strand, Island, Brainstorm? Maybe a deck without removal for Bowmasters. Tough to say. I guess we will learn now. Okay, we're up against Breakfast. So Breakfast with both combo pieces, some cantrips, and even an Ursa Saga. So what I end up doing here is I don't think my opponent will play this Illusionist into Daze. So because Nomad and Ursa Saga represents the same part of that combo, like they don't combo together, right? Shuko and Nomad. I end up taking the Illusionist here because I don't want to die to some, you know, Saga getting the combo, Illusionist, force my force or force my push. I could have taken a cantrip here, but I actually like taking the cards that my opponent will be looking for regardless with the cantrips. But yeah, this is a very tough Thoughtseize. Also, if I take that card, I'm giving my opponent the impression that I'm soft to creatures in general, which maybe can lead to a blowout with Fatal Push later. This is something I've talked about, time and time again. When you're casting a Thoughtseize, you just have to realize that what you pick is going to give a lot of information to the opponent than they can use, right? So sometimes you have to disguise that a little bit, and sometimes you have to think many turns ahead, which is basically what I'm doing here. Also, another detail I forgot about is that my opponent just cast a Brainstorm. So if they're playing at the highest level, they have the best card on top of their deck after putting 2 cards back. So now, if they play Saga, they also like the next card. If they play a Fetch, then that means they put a bad card back that I don't want to see again. So lots of small things going on here already just after a couple of turns. Yeah, no Illusionist. Keeping track of the opponent's hand here is always going to be useful. Okay, here's Windswept Heath. So this shows that my opponent didn't want to get dazed on the cantrip. I guess if they fetch first here, that's even more true. It's very complicated, like mana usage opening to this game, because now my opponent is under pressure, and that changes, how much cushioning they have when it comes to, good brainstorms and good ponders. Now they have to play with a little bit of sense of urgency, so that's the impact of Nethergoyf, putting on pressure on your opponent to, they just don't have infinite time to put it together, and they need to do it within a time frame. With that being said, my opponent could easily have hit a pile on top of the deck, and then a lot of this goes out the window, including me planning for the Kaito. Here's Ponder. Opponent's taking their time here. That's, totally within their rights. Opponent declines. Oh, it's a new way of writing it, I think. Declines to use Ponder's ability, and the ability being the shuffle means they kept the cards. So let's see if this is a plow or a develop of Nomad. Okay, my opponent plays Nomad, and I can daze it if I want to, but I actually neglect to do so because this could serve as some kind of daze check, and then I am hopefully lucky to daze a 3-drop like Nadu or Teferi next turn, so that's the hope. So here I killed with Fatal Push right away. Then I believe my plan is to ponder into another Goyf. Ooh, there's even Force of Will. But I don't think I need Force of Will this turn because I have Daze. And it's unreasonable that my opponent has combo piece, force blue card. So I can play this and then draw the force to pair with my Kaito next turn. I believe I even saw another blue card further down, so if I have the wiggle room, I can ninja the Kaito into the blue card, which would obviously be slightly better. So pressure's on our opponent here, down to 11, facing down to 4 5s. Here's Brainstorm, I like that a lot. However, my opponent's pretty likely to find a removal spell, which will then slow the game down a tiny bit. But if I can get my Kaito going with Force of Will back up, I like where this is going. So Thoughtseize early on really let me plan out this game. Let's see. Oh yeah, this is a removal spell. So Prismatic Ending means the Netherglyph is not coming back. The opponent plays around Daze with Saga, and potentially Daze is not going to do anything this game. Let's see about that. So now Ninja attack my opponent down to 8. Opponent will get Ursa Saga going, meaning that Nadu and Illusionist are both going to be backbreaking this game. Ooh. I feel like I like these cards. So now I'm drawing the Kaito because then it's my Force Pitch, and I have Daze on top of that. And then I have Fatal Push underneath. So all in all, pretty awesome. My opponent with no land drop here. That means I have 4 spells in hand. And I don't know any of them. 4 spells in hand. It's probably Nadu. Nadu, Illusionist. This is a spot where my opponent could, in theory, have Force of Will backup. So now with my opponent at 8, I think if I remember correctly that I plus this Kaito to make sure that I'm killing my opponent in 2 swings. I should have realized that that doesn't do anything if my opponent decides to make a token to block. I think this is a spot where the idea is good to make sure my opponent is dying in 2 swings, but if my opponent is just blocking, then I just gave up on drawing cards. Funny thing is, my opponent does not block, so my play ended up, you know, it worked out, but I don't think it was awesome. So now I play Netherglyph, another lethal threat. That was a big part of the math. Pass, and then I have Fatal Push for a combo attempt, or clearing a blocker in case my opponent makes 2 tokens here. So at this point, I'm not sure I can lose this game. Let's see if my opponent has land, Nadu, Force blue card. I guess that works. No, well, it's decent, but then Daze will make Revolt a thing, and then I can push the Nadu before my opponent goes nuts. So probably in good shape here. So my opponent's making the construct end of turn, which could have chum blocked the Kaito. I think in theory my opponent would want more life. Yeah, well, if my opponent doesn't have a land drop, then I have Daze Force push here, and obviously nothing matters, and we're off to sideboarding here. So this is obviously the reason I just thought about it. My opponent kept the creature around because they had to believe the Nadu was going to resolve, and then they have more stuff to Shuko onto. So never mind me. The opponent played well. I just I didn't give it enough thought. So against Breakfast, you have to respect the combo, but you also have to not die to, you know, Nadu Saga type things. Cutting Dazes, especially because now we're in the draw. Now they saw Daze. If they're on Larsen's plan, the plan that he wrote for my Metafight was, you know, bringing Cavern in, so you have 2 caverns. Unsure about cutting Molten Collapse here, so Molten Collapse kills Teferi, but I guess so does Pyroblast. Having a single Nile Spell Bomb here I actually like. So now I just have mono good cards in my deck. So I guess the Brazen Borrower is the worst card. Maybe this is what I'm saying here to myself. Yeah, pretty sweet game so far, not gonna lie. Lots of puzzle solving against both, you know, non-blue decks and blue decks. Yeah, just like how I want to play the game. All right, opponent with a little bit of sideboarding. And let me just see if I can get to the game here. All right, on the draw, good spells, low land count. It's easier to draw lands than good spells, so I feel like this hand is a keep, and we hope to find a second land shortly. This is the first time we're going to see Pyroblast in action, hopefully, this tournament, so let's see if we can find some good spots for it. Going with the mulligan. Never sad to see that. Also worth noticing is post sideboard, my opponent is very likely to have the first removal spell, in which case I should think about, do I want to grind with TMEO, or do I want to pressure with Nethergoyf? That's a solid rule of thumb, I guess. If you care about your threat resolving, play the worst one first. If you care about maximizing your potential, you play the best one first. All of that good jazz. Land here was awesome. Now I have to think a little bit about also my mana usage over the course of the next couple of turns if I have to fetch red rather for Pyroblast. And that might be a thing because turn 3 is when my opponent can cast Nadu into Fairy. So let's see. If I fetch Underground Sea here and I go Nethergoyf, I think that's pretty good. Okay, okay. So I basically force my opponent to have the removal here. Unclear if I like that. I think my logic here is this kind of forces my opponent to kill creature, and then I get more time to develop my spell bomb and be ready for the combo later. So very close decision here. I think this was reasonable. Chameo dies to prismatic ending. That means they could still have plow in hand. If they do it the other way around, I guess it means they don't have prismatic ending. That's a pretty solid rule of thumb. Because I was more flexible against bigger creatures. And now okay, that's a pretty good draw. Fatal Push is another combo. Insurance. I like my play here. I could play like super conservatively and play like the spell bomb, but I actually think this is a good play. I need to pressure my opponent. And if my opponent can go combo piece, force, I lose here. That's the thing, right? I'm pretty happy to let my opponent have the nuts if it means I'm investing in the longer term of the game. I think that's the overarching way of putting it. That's the logic behind my play here. Not because a 1-2 is good, but because, you know, my opponent plays a 3-drop, I Pyroblast it, start getting in for more damage. So developing the creature will snowball in a good way for you, rather than having the creature in hand. The more turns that pass by, the worse Nethergoyf is, basically. Very similar to like Delver Secrets. Opponent keeps the card on top, so we're going to have a good game here. So now my opponent, the thing is, my opponent has to worry about days. Here I actually make a play. Let me finish the thought about days. So I'm saying it's less likely I get to catch a 3-drop this turn, because my opponent is going to be thinking about days. And that was kind of a flaw with my plan that I should have thought more about. So here I decide to fire off Pyroblast. I also have to choose between which. It looks like my hand doesn't necessarily need double black, but maybe needs double blue. Who knows what happens with the brainstorm. I feel like this is a good spot for me to pyro. It's going to be very hard for me to have double pyro up at any stage of the game. So firing it off here is good because mana is actually an issue. It's getting a bit tight over here. So freeing up your hand by casting your spells is good. Of course, you don't want to Pyroblast anything and then, you know, end up losing to the opponent's plan. So it's a fine line to walk here. Development of the Nomad is annoying. Okay, this is cool. So now I can play Spell Bomb, attack, and just react to whatever the opponent's doing. If they play a good creature that combos with a Nomad, I can kill the Nomad. If it's a Nadu, I obviously fight with Pyroblast. Teferi, I fight with Pyroblast. It looks like I should be playing the Nile Spellbomb out first, because in theory, I lose the counter war. Well, maybe I don't, because if I get forced, then what? If I get forced, maybe I just let it resolve, actually. Okay, so this is a good play. If I get forced, I grow my Goyf before attacking. That's a very, very important thing to ask yourself, if I should play spells first main phase or second main phase. Nethergoyf is especially a card that challenges that a bit. So getting in with the Curd Ape, not ideal, but I am reducing my opponent's life total, and that's where I want to be in the matchup. Yeah, opponent just takes the turn. I'm thinking about what to do with the spell bomb, I must say. I feel like this is actually a close spot, whether I should crack it end of turn if nothing happens, or I should keep it around. Here's fourth land. And it looks like my opponent's going to cast Nadu or Teferi here, and I'm going to get mileage out of my Pyroblast. Okay, so because of what happened game 1 and just, you know, in general what's going on, my opponent delayed themselves because of days. And then I get to Pyroblast here. So buying time and having the efficient answer on the stack for Nadu is just so good. Now imagine my opponent had a Cavern here. I would have to kill the Nomad in response, let Nadu resolve, and then kill that with Pyroblast, giving my opponent a trigger. So it wouldn't be ideal. So here I decide to crack a Spellbomb end of turn with the logic of I have push if my opponent goes for the combo. I actively want to draw more creatures. I have, you know, disruption as well to draw into. So how do I lose this game? I lose this game if my opponent manages to clear the fatal push and then, you know, produce a combo before, you know, I've put them dead with another Nethergoyf, drawn more creatures to shorten that lifespan, or draw more disruption. So I think it checks out, but it's close. It's very close. I'm not super confident. Well, these draws are close to perfect, except there's a little bit when it comes to my mana usage. So now, do I play around the nuts, or do I not respect the nuts? There's Force of Will. I feel like I shouldn't play this Nethergoyf. Oh, I guess I can brainstorm. So if I find a lane, I can do it all. Okay. I like this. I don't. So I have to slow down a tiny bit here. Also have to realize that I'm Bowmastering down that Nomad next turn. Tamio is very slow. I agree about putting that away. Then maybe the next card doesn't matter. I mean, I'm not playing it out this turn, so attacking for 4, holding up push if bad things happen. Next turn, killing Nomad with Bowmaster is pretty amazing. Let's see if my opponent has some more. I mean, Nadu would be very, very annoying here. Teferi, another good one. So I think I push the Nomad in response in order to use my mana better over the course of the next turns. Nomad's dead. Teferi will bounce Nethergoyf, then I'll use Bowmaster to kill Teferi and develop another Nethergoyf, right? So, wait a minute, what's in my opponent's hand? Oh, right. Yeah. They cantrip with Teferi. I was about to say, where did they get that card from? Okay. So, in theory, my opponent could find double combo piece here, and I'm losing this game. That seemed unlosable, right? So, that's something that is always worth thinking about. So let's keep track of what the opponent does with this Ponder. To be fair, I don't think I have much agency here. I have to kill the Teferi in order to interact on my opponent's turn, so I'll Bowmaster down the Teferi, and now I can choose between Pondering or developing Nethergoyf, but I don't think Pondering makes any sense. Because I don't have a blue card, so I can never pair Force of Will. I'm tapped out, so I can't hit Pyroblast. My dazes are on my sideboard, so now I'm at the mercy. Here's Brainstorm. Yeah, that's a desperate Brainstorm if I ever saw one, which will get my opponent 2 new cards. They already knew 1 from the Ponder. And now they're getting blitzed by the Bowmaster. Getting down to 8. So if they have removal, I mean, they can stay alive here. But then again, if they have removal, that means they don't have combo piece, right? So I would take that any day of the week. Throwing the Orc Army to a 4/4, putting it down to 8. This is a removal spell on the army. No, same thing. Removal spell, and then my opponent plays out their last card, which is Flooded Strand. And at this point, I don't think they can do anything. So I'll cast Ponder first. If I complete Force, it's better, right? So now maybe these cards are just bad, and I'm supposed to... Oh yeah, this is good. Okay, so I give myself another shot at the Force of Will. Okay. Because if I find a Force of Will, Tameo is my pitch card, and my opponent can never do anything. So let's see. That card is bad. Okay, so now I have to choose if I keep digging for the Desperate Force, or I say developing another Netherwolf is going to be just fine. So I cast another Ponder here in case I hit Pyroblast and I hold that up. But I don't, I hit these cards. So I actually don't think these cards do anything. I think I should give myself a chance to spike the Pyroblast, and if I don't, I'll just play the Nethergoyf. Kind of a weird game at this point, because I'm trying to realize how can I possibly lose this game, and I think it has to do with Teferi into something. Also, if I get my opponent down to 5 here, I get Teferied. So funnily enough, I draw the Force there. But now with my opponent being at 3, it is just unthinkable that my opponent finds... I think it's like Teferi onto the Orc Army into Plow that kills the Nethergoyf. Does that even work? No, it doesn't work. I don't think my opponent has any outs here, actually. Let me know if you can spot the out here. I think that fetch made it so that there's no way out of this. And I think this is going to do it. Yep, that's going to do it. So a super sweet 4/1 here. Playing Grixis tempo. I just dominated all my wins, right? And then I got dominated by Eldrazi. So a lot of lopsided matches here and tons of small micro decisions that ultimately put me in a great place to take down a lot of matches here. So yeah, Grixis is awesome. I think for now it's worth stretching the mana for these cards. That can definitely change. I'll try and keep you updated. To go alongside this video, I'll also be posting my guide over on Metafy. I'll make sure that you can buy it with a one-time purchase, or of course you get it free if you're a $10 subscriber. You get access to everything, guest content, free tournaments, all the primers, all the guides. You get to join the Discord and be part of a very cool and growing community. I've recently got over 100 members, so tons of daily discussion going on over there. Would be awesome to see you there. And very soon I'm going to be starting signups for the Eco Cup 3.0. So don't miss out on all of that jazz. And as always, thank you so much for watching and spending time with me here, playing the most beautiful game in the world. I hope you guys are having fun with it, just like I am. And yeah, I hope to see you back soon for more Try Hard Tuesday. Thanks for watching.